Hey guys, Dr. Prometheus here, back with another tutorial video. It's going to be on the economic portions of Grand Tactician. So, one of the biggest things that we have to remember in this is a lot of the economic things happening in the background and happen as a result of your actions as a player. So what I mean by that is the financial subsidies and the policies can ultimately affect how goods and trade and production work. You don't have no direct influence on production and goods. So things upgrading on the map, you can't directly upgrade something. Can't directly upgrade the ferry. You can't directly upgrade this ironworks. All you can really upgrade is supply depots, which will go into the military section. I can't click this and upgrade anything like that. This is all on you have indirect influence to how this functions. So I'm not sure if they're gonna make it more direct in the future, but kind of how it goes. We'll start in the policy. So in your biggest one, we're not going to worry about military and diplomacy. These are kind of going to be wrapped into the military section because there's a lot more military and diplomacy. But really, your economy is functioned through your funding, your agriculture, and industry. Funding is particularly important in any campaign because it will affect your credit rating and your money flow to keep down your debt. And if you keep on accumulating debt like we did in our Union playthrough before this one, you'll have issues recruiting men, and it will actually severely impact your ability to fight the war when you get below a B, because Congress won't allow further recruitment, things like that. I don't even think you can actually give your men better arms, newer arms that are produced, because that costs money. So you can't even do that. So it can hamper your ability to fight adequately because you're ill-equipped at that point. So funding is more tailored towards the economy itself. So credit ratings means lower interest rates. You can get it kind of boosts this up faster with that. Printing notes will help you actually print money to decrease the burden on your budget, but you're causing inflation, so essentially you're lowering the public wealth through printing notes. Tarifax, one side is good for the Confederate, one side is good for the Union. When in Tarifax, I don't really take this as a Confederacy if I'm pushing hard diplomatic, because I want them to kind of enter the war, and this can actually stall it out a little bit. It's kind of a race between getting them into the war and the Union AI in this particular campaign when you're Confederacy getting to the Emancipation Proclamation, and then in that case, you aren't getting Europe to kind of get intervening. So this economic section is mostly the same other than impressment. Impressment's not there. There's one where it's like confiscation, I think it's called, for the Union, where they can confiscate property essentially and take it over from the South as they take territory. Go down 2, never really full into 3. It's kind of weird. Never really got down into that portion, but a lot of that deals with credit and increasing your budget through like printing notes. Agriculture and industry. So industry is going to have a little section in military. This is kind of cut in half. But with industry, you'll be able to produce more arms, but also the fact that you could produce more goods to trade that are more situated to industrialization. The Union starts in a base default with industrialization policy, which only allows you to go to industrialization 2. So that is something to remember, because if you do not take that or agriculture focus at the start of the campaign, like when you're at the campaign selection, when you're picking what side you're going to be on, if you do not pick one of these, you cannot go past two. I've never played one that didn't take either, because there's certain perks and stuff like that. Industrialization for the Union gives you more manpower, and you'll need more manpower to hold more territory, because you're essentially causing an invasion. You're staging an invasion. On the flip side, as a Confederate side, it's easier to get your fields because you have more of them. You can flood kind of like the market and sell and make money that way. But you don't get arms from this, so you kind of got to split between that and diplomacy to get better arms, because you can't like make Mississippi rifles. They aren't anything but the industrialization portion. So this agriculture will give you some upgrades like cotton iron rams. You can increase the sliders with agriculture, but also increases relations with Europe in this. I think it also does the same for the Union. Restrict trade, so increase European relations. When you get down here, burn cotton, increasing European relations. So this is really tailored to for the Confederacy to go hard through agriculture and hard through diplomacy to get Europe to join before the Emancipation Proclamation. So you're kind of relying on European arms. For industrialization, twofold. So it allows you to get your heavy industry more profitable, more subsidies, so you can get more supply of goods for the war effort. Meaning your ability to fight the war is increased. However, one of the strongest things with this, especially as a Union, is industrialization will allow you to equip your troops with more advanced weapons as time goes on. So I think it's in like 3, maybe 4, you're allowed to get some of the more repeating rifles, and then in that case you kind of outpace the Confederacy just in firepower. And as a Confederacy, you don't get those when you drop off, like when you defeat the enemy. So I'm not sure if they're going to do it in the future. One thing that'd be cool to see would be that when you capture arms from the Union and they're using repeating rifles, if you could actually equip your own troops with that. Maybe they'll do that in the future, but we'll kind of see. That kind of goes with that, and that's like your direct influence on how the economy works, mixed with finances. So essentially you have all of your revenues, so your tariffs, through your tariff slide, you can kind of increase, decrease. Your sales tax, kind of seeing the number, increase, decrease. Income tax, which requires a policy, I think down at war bonds or Revenue Act. Yeah, Revenue Act allows you to impose the income tax portion. Whoops. The income tax rate. Right now it's at 0, doesn't matter where it is. And I think the corporate tax comes in down here in Revenue Act 3. Will allow you to get corporate tax, which will increase your revenue. But each one of those impacts the ability of industry or people from upgrading economic structures and things like that, and will actually impact your credit rating and your economy. So it is something to be wary about, that this is your direct control with this through tariffs and policies, or through funding and policies. Your expenses, so this is your administration costs. This is all the revenues for the subsidies here combined. Subsidies here for, that's the subsidies tab. The administration is, so this is just administrative costs. Country would be higher if more sources of revenues and subsidies are used. The lower the state support, the more expensive. So this is this actually goes with policies. So this is the static cost of implementing policies. Okay, I did not know that. So there's more to use that. Okay, okay. Interest cost, that's calculated on the debt and the interest rate based on the credit rating. So you'll see down here that is, here's the national debt, 360 million is the number of outstanding debt. This is your treasury surplus, and of course that is your current treasury intake. Yeah, that's your current treasury surplus, is that. This kind of tells you if you are borrowing, your cash on hand, that sort of thing. So that is your current cash on hand. Think of it much like CK3 or EU4, where if you borrow money, this is your borrowed one, the loans that you took. This is your overall debt. So think of that. I had this backwards. So this is your overall debt. So think of this as the loans you took, and you have to pay interest on it. This is your current treasury. So say in CK3, if you fight a war and your income is in the negative, this would be like that red number of you're down 1,000 gold or whatever, or 1,000 crowns or florins or whatever. And this is your budget. So in this case, this is the rate of that you're gaining or losing money. So think of it in that sense. If it is a little bit confusing that the numbers are in 3 different places, but think of it in that idea. And it's just enhanced more to where your interest rate and credit rating affect each other, which increases how much you have to pay in your budget for interest costs. So your army upkeep, so how much it will be to pay the soldiers' pay, their provisions, and foraging. So this is all of it to keep your army supplying and ready to fight. Same thing with the Navy, keep them supplied and ready to fight. And this is recruitment. So when you need to bring in recruits, which is dependent on uniforms, if you have bounty policies, which is if you're paying people extra to join the Army or the Navy in that aspect. And I think I said weapons, uniforms, but this is like what it takes to get a recruit from the state into the pool and into the army. So this is your reinforcements. So when you look back here and it says recruits used for reinforcements, think of it as this. These are just getting them into the pool, and some of these are reinforcements. And then you have the total expenses of your expenses, and the surplus is obviously a comparison of the two. So the economy tabs, what you really see is if they're in recovery, this is only for you. Where most of your public wealth is, I think, is a union. It's like high income, or it might be like industry or something like that. As a confederacy, you have more towards low income people that are farmers, things like that, have the majority of the wealth. At this point, your unemployment rate. So unemployment can be reduced by helping corporations to settle. Employment influences private wealth positively. So that's another one. If you can balance this, have the funding that doesn't impact this, which then allows unemployment to go down, which will increase the wealth, which will increase production. So your one action has secondary and tertiary effects of what can happen, but you have no direct control over that. You can't pay down the national debt in a way like, so you could in Victoria 3, where it's like, you know what, I'm going all the way down. I'm going as much down as possible, and we're just going to pay it because we have a law in action. No, there's none of doing that. You have to fight the war at the same time you're balancing the economy. So, and then obviously national debt, interest rate, credit rating, and then your money from there is your current treasury. Funding, we kind of went through that. Tariff, sales tax, income tax, and how that affects. Subsidies, same things. You can increase your how many policies that you can have with this slider. So I would recommend in a campaign you start around like 3 or 2. But you can start with 4 policies. And you can't get 4 policies, even if you research them all at the same time. You can't get those 4 policies at the same time. It'll take about 4 months. If you do them individually, it might take you about 3, maybe some 2 and some change. So I'd recommend putting this all the way down to 0, because you're not going to be using all that money and you're kind of just wasting it at that point. If you're doing a 1861 spring campaign. I think in the summer, at that point, the policy tab should be up with what is technically what you've kind of researched. Diplomacy, that's the one to increase relations, decreasing the chance of intervention, so it's that number here. And then improve import and export prices. So that is just the prices to lower the economy, and that could help some throughput in how much weapons you can actually buy. So if you're dependent on European weapons, this is a way that you can get that little extra oomph when they do supply you. Industry, benefits for heavy industry, boosting productivity, profitability, encouraging expansion in new industries. Pretty much that slider there. Agriculture does the same thing as industry, but it's for farming. So farms, plantations, boosting productivity, profitability. Transportation, reduction of transport's upkeep costs. Increased trade flows, increased infrastructure, construction, and repair. So the infrastructure, construction, repair used to just be on railroads. Now, since you have to repair, if you take a city to get supply through it, there's a behind the scenes repair that has to be done of that infrastructure. That is included here, that you can kind of speed up that process. Trade war, increased efficiency of blockades or blockade running. So as a union, crank this baby up if you want to get good blockades. If you can afford it as a confederacy, run that all the way up and you can get some kind of decrease the trade warfare number of the blockades against you. Recruitment, increased availability of volunteers and drafts. So I'm starting to realize with this number that going very high like this isn't likely the answer as the Confederates. It is likely the answer to get more advanced policies through either conscription or bounties, so you don't actually spend this 500,000, because 500,000 is a lot, is it not? That's majority of my entire subsidy cost there, which can be used in other places to help the economy more, like say agriculture or industry, things like that. So starting to learn that recruitment up like this before the 9113 patch was good, because you weren't really trying to fight a long war because the supply system wasn't in completely. But now I'm starting to think that this is not the best way to do it, that you need to go very low, kind of tailor everything. Civil order, loss of state support due to raiding, drafting, combat losses, intelligence gathering is improved. So if you want to see units of the enemy further you put it higher or lower. If you don't care about seeing it, if you're having a lot of combat losses, if you're getting raided, um, if you had to do the draft policy because you're losing territory, things like that, civil order will keep your state support up, which you can see. Let me go to recruit. So it'll keep this up, and by keeping this up, you'll increase your men available for volunteers and draftees, and you will decrease the amount of deserters that you have. So you do have that. I'm not sure if deserters actually go back in the pool with one of the economic sliders. So that's how you have that. If you don't want to fool with any of this, you have auto-managed finance, and the AI will do it kind of for you. So what does this affect? Here you can see the production of all the companies. See their efficiency is the kind of like the level of how they are. You see what they're producing. See what their value is. And if you were to corporate tax it, you add that policy, you would be able to see what corporate tax you're getting from these entities. As the Confederacy, you see the slave ratio. And then as the Union, we should be Union ones, not mistaken. Nope. This is just all that are within the Confederacy with that. Say I want to see Union. Here's all the Union ones. They only have, oh, they have slave. Well, I guess that is true. Some areas they did have that. Baltimore, Maryland at this point was a slave state, so that makes sense. Places like Quincy, Illinois, and stuff like that. So I wonder if, which is probably right, is once you have the Emancipation Proclamation and some of the policies the Union does, if this completely goes to zero. But as you can see, their workforce is over here, and you can kind of see what production, kind of what goes into what they produce, value, corporate tax, efficiency, and you can see it for both sides. You can see it for England, it's in Canada. France doesn't have anything on the map. Mexico doesn't really have on the map, and Spain doesn't really have anything on the map. So Spain, France, Mexico is kind of off map. You have all your types, so your factories, your mines, your ports, saltworks, foundries, kind of filter by what you're looking for. Then by alphabet, location, level, what the ratio of slaves, what the workforce is, type, taxes, things like that, you can sort. So going through this limestone Nile caves. So you see its budget changes, or its production value. Looks like this is actually broken because this all says 4. Let's actually run it past the 4th. Okay. See there, our budget was actually brought in, which is funny. Okay, here we go. Now we should have some graphs. Okay. So its budget went up. Hard to see. 4th of February. Let's run it for a full week at this point. Since it doesn't run on a save game. Like those maps only increase, decrease as you're running the game. So if you load a save and look at that, it's not going to be there. Let's see what happens if we manage taxes. Maybe that is the way. Okay. So we should have at least a good idea. You have some. So I don't think the graph is adequately working. Like the actual graph here. Or they're just continually going up. I see none of them continue. I see none of them going down. Which is weird. Okay. Just not worry about that graph. Some things may not work, but this is a period during the previous 12 months. So maybe we need multiple months to really take a look at that. So that kind of tailors towards a long playthrough. So here we go in Niner Cave. So give you the production value produced over the last 12 months. I wish I could change this by month. So this is how much it made in the last year, what its efficiency is. So goods production becomes increasingly efficient if the same goods are produced for a longer time. Workforce, you need to reach a higher production utilization. Population growth leads to higher available workforce, while the foundry of new companies or recruitment lowers it. So if it expands and you don't have workforce, then you will actually get that workforce down. That's why, like here, this workforce is going down. Why is that? Why is that one in Tuscaloosa going down? Slaves, corporate tax. Just getting all the textiles and the things it needs. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is in the background and you don't really have to worry about it. So efficiency is just getting started. So I wonder if it just got built. Here's one at 100%. Logging camp. It's not getting a workforce. Those profits are going down, but it's producing a lot because it's a building level 2. So a lot of this stuff works in the background. The biggest thing to affect it is tariffs and kind of keeping your economy under wraps. So they kind of do that. And then goods and trade. There's not much to say with production. There's not much of it as a player you can really do. And some people might say, well, you don't know much about it. Well, the biggest thing is it doesn't really affect me in a campaign. So I never really have to think about it. I never really use these two tabs. Because the fact of artillery, I can't effectively force production of artillery. I can't force any of these things, so I don't really worry about it. This kind of tells you what your production is. So 174 pieces of artillery is made a year. This is how many are in stock. Biggest thing is I don't think that is necessarily correct. Let's say we go over here and we want 12-pound howitzers and there's like 20. So I'm not sure what this number is based on. If this is how many, like, we have 964 in the depot, but I can't use many, so I'm not sure what some of these numbers actually represent when it comes to actual things on the campaign or actual things to control on the map. Like, I can't recruit 964 cannons. But yet the game says I have 964 cannons. Another thing that is weapons. I got 9,502 in depots right now. So is that considered that 900 and, like, is that what that 40 is? Is that 40 times 3,000, which is your max you can bring through? is not that number. So some of the numbers are kind of confusing on how that matches the things you have on there. The biggest thing that you need to know with the economy is policies affect your finances, and your finance subsidies and things affects your credit rating and your wealth, which will then affect your ability to wage war. So that's the biggest thing you need to know right now. Maybe they expand on it, maybe they change some stuff to be more directly player influenced, but that is the biggest thing that you need to know at this point. So thank you all for joining me for the economic portion. It's kind of one of the lesser touched things in the game. It's more about the slight diplomacy and putting that into a military application. It's more about the military side. So it's gonna be a longer video next time. Go ahead and leave a like below, comment, and subscribe if you have any questions. I will do my best on the economy section to answer them. Otherwise, see you guys in the next one. Later.